This video is brought to you by Squarespace. All right, welcome back everybody. We're going to be checking out some photographs that people have sent in today, and I do these fairly regularly, at least twice a month. And one thing that I want to add is that, I guess maybe a month ago, I started talking about the idea of me doing critiques in this. I think that's gone fairly well so far, but I want to talk a little bit about some parameters that I'm putting around that. So first of all, critiques are actually very challenging in this format because the person who made the photographs is not here to discuss them with me. And so they're kind of hard because I don't know what the goals are of the person who took them. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with their photography or with their career, if they're trying to go professional, if they're trying to shoot commercial, if they're trying to make art, or if they're just having fun. However, I do see the value in actually giving my opinion on these works because we're all in this to learn. We're all in this to get better. And for you guys as viewers, even though this isn't your work we're looking at, there's something you can probably learn through discussion as well. So that's why I actually do like to take the stance now of critiquing these somewhat as we go through them. One tiny concern though that I have on these is what I don't want to do is get into piling on people or being negative in any way. I think that the only way that critique is going to work is that when we're honest about things, we also try to compliment on what is going right in the photographs. And I think having just a basic amount of respect and dignity of the photographer who sent the work in my opinion, if somebody went to the trouble to make something and send it in, then they deserve at least the credit for that. That's what we're all here to do, is it's in the spirit of making things. I really wouldn't say that I've had a problem with it, but I do want to say that I have deleted some comments of some people that just decided to be turkeys in the comment section, but it is YouTube, and I guess you've got to expect that to some degree. But just a few parameters that I want to put around things. So the first thing I have talked about in videos before, first of all, we never apologize for a photograph here at The Art of Photography. You've made a statement, and you're going to stand behind it. We never apologize for a photograph. Secondly, the whole idea of what we're doing as photographers, and we consider the practice of photography, that we have to understand that that's never ending. We don't ever just reach a point where we're like, oh, hey, look, I'm a great photographer, I guess I'm done now. It doesn't work that way. We're always striving to do something different, something new, something unique, something better. And so that's the spirit that I want to come at this with, is how can we do to take these things to the next level? And I think that should imply not only to myself, but as you as the viewer as well, we're all trying to get better in the end. And finally, I want to add that just in the spirit of creation, if you had told me 10, 20 years ago that one day people would be sending all this amazing stuff in and that this channel would be a jumping point for people to actually create and make things, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, it just didn't seem even possible. And it's amazing that you guys do this. So I thank everybody who sends work in. It always makes my week, and it is just something that I'm very proud of, and I think you guys should be too. So having said that, let's get to some mail. Okay, so first up is this little set of 3 zines. These come to us from Luc Kordas. These are additions to a bigger project he's been working on. This is number 10, New York Cops, number 11, Daydreamers, and number 12, Prospect Park. Luc includes a postcard which reads, "Hi Ted, I am a big fan of your YouTube channel. Thank you for all of the great content. I came across your episode on zines and decided to send you mine for the next episode. I release these every once in a while, all New York themes. There are currently 12 issues. Thanks, Luc." All right, Luc, these are all 3 outstanding. I really like the print quality that's on here, and I've made comments to people who've worked in black and white before. One of the problems that you can do when you get into really high contrast photography is you start to lose stuff in the shadows, and I'm not getting that here. I think these are all really well printed. The one that I want to focus on, I think that most of the, well, 2 of the 3 are fairly conventional in terms of street photography. They have some really nice images in them, but the one that catches my attention is this latest called Prospect Park. This kind of reminds me of one of the books that I did in the last video. The whole book was essentially a portrait of a bridge or a monument, and this is similar in that this is a portrait of Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And I really love what you're doing here, and one of the things that I love is that although I think the street photography is really good in the other 2, what makes this stand out, you're using much more variety in your point of view. So for instance, some of these look like drone shots that were taken from above. You have other shots that incorporate a lot of motion blur in them, and so there's a lot more variety in the types of looks that you're providing in these. I also love the fact that this is all thematic on Prospect Park. I like the fact that the whole series is on New York, but this one has a really unique portrait element to it, and I think one of the things comes from that variety of different styles of shooting, and the other thing is that, you know, the sum of all these ends up being the whole that is Prospect Park, even though we never see the park in its entirety necessarily, with the exception of maybe some of the drone shots. The night shots are outstanding on here, and these are ones that can be very difficult to pull off if you don't have really good good printing quality. There's a lot of shadow detail that gets lost. I think this is really excellent. The night shots are probably my favorite in here. Anyway, Luc, thanks for sharing. These are awesome. I will link up Luc and everybody else that you're seeing here in the show description below if you want to know more and maybe get some of these. All right, next up is a book that I really like. This is a lot of fun. This is called Kaleidoscapes. This comes to us from Dean Homer. So this is Kaleidoscapes London, and Dean has a note, and he writes, "Dear Ted, thank you for being an inspiration to the thousands of aspiring photographers who follow your channel. It's without doubt that many of your viewers, like myself, have found your enthusiastic videos stimulating and motivating. I can't thank you enough for inspiring me to produce this book." Enclosed. Kaleidoscapes London is a unique perspective that pays homage to the modern architecture of London. I made this book with Blurb, where it can be viewed. Like yourself, I would very much like to inspire and encourage everyone to produce their own book. The whole process, from galvanizing the ideas to taking the pictures and finally seeing them in a book, is extremely therapeutic. So thank you very much. Yours sincerely, Dean. Okay, Dean, first of all, this is awesome. Thank you for sending. This is very different work indeed. It stands out from most of the stuff that I get in here. And what I like about it, even though that you are relying on some technical things to get these images and to create these kind of visuals that you're showing here, it doesn't get boring. I don't feel like it's a gimmick as I go through this. In fact, it gets kind of interesting when you realize that what you see at first looks like a kaleidoscope, but then you get closer and you really begin to become interested in what the structure is that you're looking at, and when you start to see logos and things. I love the fact that this book is really small. I love the square format. I think it complements perfectly. And I love the colors that you're using in here. Everything is very bold. It's very, very loud. This has certainly very much a graphic design aspect to it, but I really like it. I think this is really well executed, and it's nice to see something different now and then that comes in. If I had to say anything in terms of critique on this, is that I want to see these much larger. I want to see big prints of this, or even a larger book. But having said that, I actually wouldn't change this up at all, because that's exactly the way you want the viewer to feel after looking at your work. You want them to see more or in a different context. It makes it a very rememberable experience. So Dean, awesome work. Thank you for sharing, and I'll list Dean's information below. All right, so next up, I've got a portfolio of images that came in that are very interesting. I think there's a lot that we can learn from these, and there's also a little zine that came in. But first, real quick, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor this week, who are the awesome folks over at Squarespace. Listen, you need a website, and we all know how much work that is to build and maintain, but it doesn't have to be. Squarespace is by far the easiest way to build your online presence. It's also the best way to grow a business that works for you without having to write a single line of code. Do you just need a simple portfolio or a blog to showcase your work? Well, Squarespace is perfect. Featuring a drag and drop interface. It's intuitive, it allows you to build galleries quickly and update your site with ease. Are you running a business? Well, Squarespace gives you additional tools for things like appointment scheduling, private member areas, social media tools, and even advanced email marketing. Do you sell products or services? Well, Squarespace has you covered with complete tools to power your store, from merchandising to checkout, so that you can sell, ship, and build your customer base. You can even sell classes or manage appointments through your website. And with Squarespace extensions, you can easily sync with third parties to manage, optimize, and enhance your website. From social media integration to SEO, Squarespace gives you all the tools you need to grow a business that works for you. So head over to Squarespace and sign up for the free trial. Start with one of their award-winning templates and see what you can create and just how good you're going to look. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AOP, and I can save you an additional 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Just use offer code AOP on checkout. So give it a try and see if Squarespace is right for you. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. All right, next up we have a portfolio of images, and these come to us from Matan Ziv from New York. And he has a little note here, which comes back to one of our little guidelines here. Sorry for the sort of crappy printing. Matan, we never apologize for a photograph. But Matan writes, "Dear Ted, my name is Matan Ziv. I'm an 18-year-old photographer and musician living in New Paltz, upstate New York. I have been doing photography for around 3 years, as it stemmed from my interest in filmmaking, which I have been passionate about for a very long time. I discovered your channel about a year ago and completely got hooked. It is so rare to find a true master of their craft willing to publish their knowledge for free for the public's benefit, and to that I say bravo. I sent with this letter a collection of my best work. It is very hard to choose without sending you 100 different prints, so I hope this provides a good retrospective of my work and photographic style to you. There are both digital and film photographs in this collection, as I shoot both. Although I shoot film a lot less now and I don't have access to a darkroom anymore, they had one at my school, I absolutely adore the film process, from developing film to making prints in the darkroom, because it's just plain and simple produces better work. There's something about using physical substance in photography that makes one think in a different way, and is quite profound, I've found. I currently graduated high school, and I'm about to embark on a 3-month trip to Berlin to intern and apprentice with another master of photography, Thomas Strutt. He is a master of large format photography. As I have not done anything more than 35mm and a little medium format, I am very excited to say the least. Okay, first of all, congratulations on your apprenticeship with Thomas Strutt. If you guys are not familiar with Strutt, he's an incredible photographer. He is part of a newer school of German photography. His works are very interesting. It's a lot of cityscapes, but what's curious about them is he tends to prefer them to be completely devoid of people at all. And so they have kind of an interesting stark quality to them that I warmed up to a lot over the years, and I really love Strutt's work. So that's going to be amazing for you. Second of all, for somebody who's 18, I think you've got a very good eye, and there's a lot of strong stuff here. A couple notes that I want to make and do a little critique on your work here is that a lot of these, I like them. The compositions are really nice, but to me, they play it a little bit safe. You tend to favor framing things up in the center of the frame or just slightly off axis. However, there are a couple images here that I do want to point out that could be a possibility for direction and kind of a different way to start thinking as you move forward. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. First of all, this one with the grid where you see the people walking on the walkway. I really like this. Again, you're playing it pretty safe, putting those people right there in the middle. What would be interesting is if you'd wait around a little bit and see how this scene plays out, and you were able to get your figures closer to the edge or in a less obvious location. I think that's something that would really make this next level. It's close. It's really good. However, there's just a little thing that you could tweak, that you could start thinking just in a slightly different mode, which actually is interesting because you actually do that in a couple of these images. This one is really cool, and I'm not sure if it's going to pick up on the video that well because it does get pretty dark, but essentially this looks like it was probably taken out of an airplane, but we have a landscape, but it's just a very different landscape. It's got a grid structure to it, and I love the way that it goes from dark at the bottom and then you go into this atmospheric haze at the top. It just really works, and it's something that's very different from the rest of your work here. Another one that I find interesting is this extreme horizontal landscape, and you said you had a passion for filmmaking, and this may have been inspired by some of that because you have this ultra wide angle frame, but I like this because it kind of forced you to break up a lot of the similarities that I'm seeing in a lot of these images, and it gives you some geometric stuff to work with here. And so maybe just rather than thinking like in terms of 35mm or medium format or large format, is think in different terms of aspect ratio, because I think that's probably inspiring something as well. Another one that I like, and I don't know if it's going to pick up on the video correctly or not, but this is this one of this lighthouse, and there's another lighthouse way back in the back. And what I'm seeing you do here is you're starting to play with depth and the throw in that, and also the juxtaposition and change in size in the way these two lighthouses play with one another. I'd kind of maybe like to see you zoom in and cut all this information out of the frame. I don't know that we necessarily need a lot of the rocks and all, but it's an interesting image, but maybe reframing it would work a little bit. And one that I really love, and it's not that it's super wild or anything, but it's just this nice portrait in the way it's lit. Fades into darkness, we get the essential information off the face, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I love it and it works. But this little ball of bokeh or whatever that we've got over in the back here, it may just be a reflection from the lens. I'm not sure if it's intentional, but I love it because it gives you a sense of balance that comes across. It keeps things as symmetrical as you're kind of thinking in your head, but things are off axis, and so it works to play to that, and just adds a lot of interest to the image. But I want to add, though, for somebody who's 18, I think there's a lot of thought that's being expressed in these images, and you're going to do really well. Just keep at it. The other thing is studying with Thomas Strutt and being able to apprentice is, I mean, my gosh, I would want to do that. I think it's going to be incredible. Just be a sponge, soak everything up, learn as much as you can, and enjoy it. Okay, next up is this little zine that comes to us from Dave Biddlecombe. Dave is in the UK, and he writes, "Hi Ted, I've been a follower of your channel for a couple of years and always enjoy your unique content. Keep it up. You inspired me to print my work, and having bought a printer, I thought I'd make my first zine, Flowers. This isn't my typical work, but my wife recently underwent a hip operation, confining me to the house to look after her. To keep myself occupied and out of trouble, I decided to photograph flowers in my home studio. The pictures cover the 3 stages of a flower's life: growing, prosperity, and decay. I hope you like them. Hopefully this is my first zine of many, Dave." All right, so Dave, excellent little zine. More importantly, I hope your wife is doing much better right now, and I'm glad you came up with a project to keep yourself out of trouble. I think this is very well done. I don't know what kind of printer you got, but this is outstanding. I thought this was commercially printed when I thumbed through it the first time. I think that this is really the big takeaway here for me, and I hope that people are getting this from it, is you mentioned this is not your usual work, and so you had a situation that allowed you to explore new territory. I think that's very powerful, and I think you have some really interesting things going here. I love the way that you're playing with light on here. There's a couple images that are here, one outdoors where you've got the sunlight coming through, and another one that could have been indoors, but you still have that same yellow light, and it's really strong. The color ones in the middle are obviously the ones that get my attention the most. I think they're really well done. I love the way you played with light on the tulip here, and it's really nicely done. The only things I would say about this, there's two things. First of all, when you're going to run typography here, and I understand you're supplementing your material and supporting it with some text, I think it's a little big. I would shrink that down. And basically everything when you get into doing a book, and you're probably learning this if you're printing zines, and don't stop, print more because you're going to learn a lot. But understanding with any kind of book format how everything works together as a whole is really important. So understanding how the images work in terms of scale, I'll get to that in a second, but also typography when it runs in here. It's just a little large, and when that distracts from the image, it needs to support it, not compete against it. So that's one little thing I would say. And another thing, and I know you just got a printer, and this is what everybody's tendency, myself included, is to do full bleed stuff. Just like, let's just soak every inch out of this photograph possible. And I think that's fine, but you shift back and forth in here between doing that. And so some of them have borders, some of them don't, some of them have black borders. And so what I would do is kind of pick a format and stick to it. I think you could easily, especially in the case of these two images, include borders. There's nothing wrong with like putting the photograph within context. And I think that would help a little bit of continuity in here as well. And another thing that I love is how you're trying to go through this whole life cycle throughout the course of the book, from a flower, the growing, the prosperity, and then finally the decay at the end. And it's very difficult to do in a book that's this short. And so I hope that's something that you continue to explore with and experiment with in your own work. And the reason I say that is because this last image in here, I think is one of the best images in this whole thing. Because it's understated, it's in a different light, it's a non-conventional image. It's something that I'm not used to seeing in a lot of different places. And I think it's very understated and very cool. The other thing that's really neat is that, you shifted paper because you're going to your cover paper here. And I don't know if you guys are going to pick this up in the video. This is more of a glossy, and this is more of a matte finish. Experimenting with your images on different finishes and different papers is very important, and I think this is one of the most outstanding images in here. I'd love to see this go in a new direction. Maybe you just do an entire zine that's just decay, and you talk about flowers that are dying, and there's so many wonderful textures and colors that you can get in making something that somebody's about to throw out because it's not beautiful anymore, very beautiful. So anyway, just a couple comments that I would make. Keep doing it, man. This is awesome. I love to see people who are experimenting with new things, new directions. I don't know what your other photography is like, but it's almost beside the point. And my point here, and I think this is the takeaway for people who want to learn, is put yourself in a new direction. Force yourself into doing something that you've never done before, that's way outside your comfort zone. You're going to be really surprised when you start getting into it, how that work starts to develop and progress. And I would love to see more of this, Dave. This is really nice. Thanks for sending. As usual, I will link up to everybody in the show description. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, later.